What made you decide to listen to the episode today? Was it something I said? Maybe in a previous episode? Maybe the title or the description of the podcast? Whatever the reason, I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for joining me today. So the reason I asked the question is that I am pretty particular about the language and the phrasing that I use because I want to attract the right people to my content and to my business. And that's what today's episode is all about. This is part 2 of a 3-part little mini series on branding. And so today we're going to talk about language and how to talk to your customers. So stick around and learn what language you need to be speaking in to get customers into your business.
Inkyma's Marketing Strategies is a podcast for small business owners hosted by Audrey Kirchner, co-founder and chief marketing strategist at Inkyma, helping you navigate the world of marketing so that you can market your business in the right way, see growth, and thrive regardless of the industry you're in. To learn more about Inkyma and what we do, ask a question, or schedule a marketing evaluation, go to the website inkyma.com. That's INKYMA.com. Listen to the show on your podcast player of choice, the Inkyma website, or the Inkyma YouTube channel. Just search for Inkyma Marketing Strategies and you'll find what you need.
So before I get into the topic at hand, let's talk about show notes. Go to the website, into the podcast area. Every single episode is there. And for this episode, all of the links that I'm going to be talking about, I'm going to reference other episodes. I'm going to reference other people and all this other good stuff. All the links to that are in the show notes. And that can be found at inkyma.com. That's INKYMA.com. I may not say it. I'd say, hey, go to the show notes for this each time. But if you hear me say episode this or episode that, or mention a person's name, check out the show notes. There's probably a link in there for you. Okay, so let's start getting into the content. Let me set the stage for you, right? Because it is part 2 of 3 parts. So it all started with episode 2, where I did a nice overview and dove into what branding is, all the parts and component pieces. So definitely go back and listen to episode 2 to get the details. But I'm going to give you a quick rundown here so that you have everything I'm talking about in context. Number 1 big piece of a brand is how you're perceived by your target audience, what your values are, what your dreams, your philosophy. This is the easiest part of the brand because it comes from you. It's about you. It's about why you did or are doing what you're doing. The second part is who you're talking to and the language that you're using, the language that you're speaking in, the voice of your customer. And then part 3 is the visual identity, the logo, the fonts, the colors, the images that you use, and how you mix them together. Now, these are in order of creation. So meaning you need to figure out parts 1 and parts 2 before you start part 3. But most people I talk to, or when we talk about branding, they always have part 1 done, right? Because that's about them. That's their why. It's what they first start talking about when I say, hey, what do you do? Why do you do that? But then immediately when they're building their brand, they jump right to 3, totally skip over number 2. And so they're not likely to know what their customer really needs from them or how they're going to be perceived. So in episode 37, which is part 1, I help you figure out who your perfect customer is, who that target audience is, who you want to talk to. And now in this episode, we're going to focus on what to say and how to say it to them. Or as I like to say, we're going to start speaking their language. So why is this important, speaking to them in their language? So it's really busy, noisy, distracting, chaotic out in the world. And what you need to realize is you're not just competing with your competitors in your field to get your customers' attention. You're competing with their kids, their dogs, their spouse, their phone, their work, someone knocking at the door, a loud crash, an animal outside, you name it, right? So the language you choose to use to grab their attention and make them want to focus on you is really important. And you need to do that fast before the next thing comes up, right? And the fastest way to do this is to speak their language, not yours. So let's talk about fast in context, right? The average website user's attention span is around 8 seconds. That's it. That's all you get. You get 8 seconds to say why they should choose you. That's shorter than an elevator speech. That's shorter than when you go to a networking meeting and you're talking about your business or your service, right? 8 seconds. Try to have a complete thought come out of your mouth in 8 seconds, because that's all you get. And this is why in episode 3, where I talk about the 5 biggest mistakes I see businesses make on their website, is that they use too much language and they talk about themselves. You need brief language that's really short because of this short attention span. And it actually carries over into all other parts of marketing. I'm talking email, digital ads, social media, pretty much everywhere. That attention span is pretty short. So what you say, how long you take to say it is super important, and being consistent about what you say is really important too, because it takes the average person 7 to 10 times to register a message that they're hearing or seeing or correlating the two together. Meaning you can't give them a call to action one way and then one another way and then hope that they say, oh yeah, it's the same thing that they're asking me to do. Go back to the whole noise and confusion and the dogs in the phone. If they keep seeing it over and over again, their brain's going to say, yeah, same company. And so that's really what branding is giving people the opportunity to become familiar enough with your brand to trust buying from you. And then if they buy from you, then you want to really seal the deal and get that brand solidified with them so they become a fan. So think about the brands that you're fans of. What have they been doing? They've been consistently in your face without being in your face and being really helpful to you. So now that I think I have your attention on why this is important, let's talk about how you craft that language to create the voice of your customer. So now that you're like, hey, I want to learn how to talk to my customer in their language, how do you figure this out? You're being consistent in every place, and that your brand is really cohesive. The visual part is not the only part that has to be cohesive. The language and how you represent yourself has to be cohesive. The entire brand has to be cohesive. So in order to do that, to make sure your language is consistent everywhere, you have to start off with the high-level language, the language of the brand, the voice of your customer. And you do this by creating a story about your customer, about themselves, as it pertains to your product or service. So the simplest way to do this is to answer a few questions based off the customer persona. And so now we're going to walk through those questions, and the questions are going to be in the show notes too, so you can go back and do it. If you're in your car or you don't have the ability to stop and write stuff down, answer them in your head while we're doing this. And then I'm going to try to weave in an example, and I'm going to use shoes as an example because you know what? We all wear shoes and we do it for all sorts of different reasons. So question number 1, what do they want from your brand? This one's kind of simple, right? And it's going to be tied to whatever your product or service is. So they want high quality shoes at an affordable price from your brand. Pretty simple. Next one is, what's their problem? And everyone has 2 problems when they're buying something. They have their external problem, which is the easier of the 2. Shoes. I need shoes. The internal problem, a little bit harder, but it's definitely worth figuring out because this is where the money is. The internal problem is, I need a pair of shoes that make me feel confident when I'm at work. That's really different than I need a pair of running shoes that make me faster. How you respond to that internal problem for those 2 different things, totally different. But it's the same external problem. I need a pair of shoes. So make sure you know your internal problems really well. You might have more than one. If you have more than one internal problem, you're going to need a couple different stories because the rest of these questions will probably be different depending on what that internal problem is. Next one is, why should they choose you? For your experience, your exceptional service, your quality? When you're answering this, I want you to use empathy. We know how hard it is to ... So in this instance, we know how hard it is to feel confident at work when you're competing with your peers. And we understand that when you look your best, you feel your best, right down to your shoes. So that's the kind of thing you want to put in there. Then you need to back it up with proof, right? You need case studies, you need testimonials, or you need really great blog articles that position you as a subject matter expert. So make sure that you have that backup for proof and just jot that down. I got X number of testimonials. I've got a case study, or build a case study. Give yourself an action item. Next question. What do you want them to do to solve their problem with respect to your brand? These are your calls to action. So in our case, for shoes, we want them to buy work shoes because we know that's part of their internal problem. We're going to solve that with these pair of shoes right here on the screen. Imagine them. So that is a direct or primary call to action, right? Transactional. A transitional call to action or a secondary call to action is maybe they're not ready to buy, but they do want to stay engaged with you. They like what they've heard. Maybe they don't have the budget just yet to buy the shoes. That's where email signups are beautiful, because you're not asking for money. All you're asking them to do is stay in touch with you. Sign up for our newsletter to hear about specials, new inventory coming in, and understanding why shoes matter. And that allows you to touch base with them weekly, bi-weekly, once a month, whatever your email process looks like. You can use social media here, but email is far superior because you know who, what, when, where, how many times they clicked on something. And that may make you drive to just sending an extra email, one little extra email going, hey, I know you were really interested in this. How about 10% off? Boom. You might have just made the sale there. You can't get that kind of data from social media. And it's really hit or miss what they get to see and what they don't get to see. So I like using email here. You're listening to Marketing Strategies, and I'm Audrey Kirschner. And today we're taking one of the more important but less focused on parts of building your brand or creating your brand and figuring out how to speak to your customer in their language. On to our next question. What does success look like if they choose you? So they say, yes, you've solved my problem. I'm buying these shoes. Help them dream a little. What does that success look like? They had a great presentation. They looked great, right down to their shoes. They felt great, and they won the bid. They impressed their boss. They got the promotion. They made their peers jealous, whatever that's going to look like in that scenario. You need that high-level language so that when you're creating language in other places, you can thread that in. And then similarly, next question, what does failure look like if they don't choose you? If they don't buy those shoes? They lack confidence. They don't look good. They don't feel good, because when you look good, you feel good. People look at them differently. They don't look quite as capable as they really want to be perceived. Jot all those in there. People are really uncomfortable with using this, but you can sprinkle it in. This is the accent piece, but have it so that you know what it is in your mind. And then the last part is create one sentence that is their transformation. They went from XXX to YYY. So in this instance, they went from feeling self-conscious. They go from self-conscious to confident just by changing their wardrobe and buying a fabulous pair of shoes. And now they've got the job, they got the promotion, and are well respected in their business community. Something to that effect. Okay, now that I used the shoe example and broke it down, I created a brand script for a coffee wholesaler company that I want to share with you. Okay, so let's start from the top. What does your customer want as it relates to your brand? As a coffee aficionado, I am always searching for new brews to add to my collection. But I have a problem. I'm a home barista. I'm looking for good coffee to drink and experience. And I want to share that experience with friends and family and with fellow coffee lovers. My internal problem is I love coffee and I want to get coffee from people that get coffee lovers, right? I want to buy coffee from people that are just like me. So my empathetic understanding statement is, we love coffee too. This is me as the brand talking. We understand that coffee is an experience, a companion, and it always must be amazing from the first to the last sip. There's nothing worse than a bad cup of coffee. And then we're going to back this up with testimonials and expert blog articles about all the things coffee. Now let's look at the calls to action. The direct call to action is buy the brew. We're using colloquialisms that coffee lovers use. And then transitionally, we want people to sign up to get engaging, fun, educational information about coffee and special offers only available to the Brew Crew. Sign up for the Brew Crew newsletter. So let's see what that success looks like if they buy the product. An amazing coffee experience to share with other coffee lovers, an aroma and flavor that brings pleasure and warms my heart and soul. And let's see what failure looks like. Bad coffee that brings no pleasure, no joy. A disappointing experience. Now, you may not be a coffee lover, but if you are an enthusiast about anything, the words a disappointing experience can resonate with you no matter what. Nobody wants to be disappointed when it surrounds something that they truly embrace and enjoy. So now let's look at their transformation. They go from okay coffee that just wakes you up, from a coffee company that isn't made to be experienced by coffee lovers. It's not made for me. And then we go to an amazing coffee experience that feeds your need for coffee any time of the day. And the quote can be, I found a coffee that gets my love for brew as more than a daily pick-me-up, but as a daily companion, right? They're seeing coffee as their friend, and they know that this company sees coffee as your friend and their friend. So hopefully that helps you understand how emotional and impactful that story can be. So you take that story, that voice of the customer, their language, and your customer persona that you've created, and then a couple things are going to happen. One, it's going to be so much easier to pull your visual identity together, right? The logo, the fonts, the colors, the images that you're going to use everywhere. When you create that logo or have someone create it for you, bump it up against the story and go, yeah, that's the kind of logo someone like that's going to want to see, or the language that's behind it. And then secondly, it's going to make writing your copy far more easy and keep it far more consistent, brand cohesion here for your ads, your websites, your emails, and all that other good stuff. Because you're going to kind of use that high-level language you created and just tweak it for different places. So an example for an ad headline that you might use is Coffee Lovers Rejoice. Get great coffee, right? That's it. Coffee lovers, I've identified you, I know you, and guess what? I got great coffee. It's going to attract their attention immediately because you're self-identifying them. You've identified who they are as they see themselves. And this is what I mean when I say speaking to them in their language, using their story and not yours. So hopefully that statement makes so much more sense to you now than when we first started talking about this. So hopefully I've got you motivated and inspired to start putting these things together. So let me give you your next couple of action steps so that you can really and truly create a brand and not just a logo going forward. So step number 1, I want you to grab that customer persona that you created after listening to episode 37. If you haven't done that, go back and do that. And then get started answering the questions that we talked about in this episode to create that story. Now remember, if you have more than one persona, you're going to need more than one story. Every persona is a person, right? It's a fictitious customer, and they're segregated for a reason, and so each one has their own story. And what you may find when you go through these is that there's overlap in their stories. And that's great because then you get to see this overarching theme for all of your customers, and you get to talk to that everywhere with then pulling in details. It's really cool when that happens. So once you've completed those stories or the voice of the customers, figuring out their language, now you're ready to get started with your visual assets. If you already have a logo, don't worry. Bounce that logo up against these personas and the stories. And if you find that your logo doesn't really fit, it's okay. It's actually a really great thing because now you know. And knowing allows you to make changes. And now your next step after understanding this is to listen to the third part of the mini series. So if you're listening to this the day it came out or that first week, you got 7 days to wait, not that long. If you're after that, you can binge listen if you want to. And that's where we're going to cover how those visual identities are supposed to be created so that they match the brand that you're building, your values, your customers, their language, and how it all comes together. So hopefully you're excited about moving on to that third part. So I do have a couple final thoughts for you here as we're wrapping up. So disclaimer alert. This is not easy. This has been part of our process here at Inkyma for years, and we build brands all the time. We're constantly writing customer personas and doing voices and language of the customer and looking at this stuff, and not just at a brand level. Whenever we create a piece for a client, so if someone says, hey, build me an email series, we go back and we start out with creating a voice so we know who we're talking to and what we're trying to say. And we've done a lot of education around. We took a course by Donald Miller. He is the author of StoryBrand, which is trademarked. So if you want to learn more about that, there's a link in the show notes to that course. And he also wrote a book. If you want to just get the book and read through the material, it's really fascinating. It's great because it really gives you the behind the whys to those questions and why, how, and all this is helpful, much more than what I've been able to share with you in this half hour. But in addition to that, we sprinkle in other things. We sprinkle in what we know about personality typing from taking courses like Bank or Myers-Briggs. And then we pull in information from our learnings about behavioral economics to create a brand and to create that language. So there's a lot of heady stuff. So I know some folks may want or think that, oh, I can do this myself, or I need to do it myself because I don't have a budget. If you can afford it now, have a professional do this for you. If you can afford it now, then as soon as you can, save up your money and invest in getting a brand created for you. And it may take you a year, it may take you 2 years, but just make sure that you do it and use a company like us, like Inkyma, where we put all this stuff into it. We're not just going around and pulling random things together. This investment that you make now or hopefully into the very near future will benefit you throughout the lifetime of your business. Let's get this wrapped up. What I want to offer you is a 45-minute free consultation to any business owner. And the reason we do this is that we love giving back to the business community here at Inkyma. So in that 45 minutes, if you want to talk about how we can help you with branding, or you have questions about branding, whether you want to hire us now or you want to hire us into the future, that's totally up to you. Maybe you want to talk about your website. We can do that. That 45 minutes is yours. So just go to my website, Inkyma.com, INKYMA.com. And in the upper right-hand corner, there's a button, Schedule a Marketing Evaluation. You click on that, you pick your date and time, and we are on the schedule to talk. Maybe you just have a quick question that you want answered through email. Bottom of the pages, there is a contact form. Fill it out. It's going to come to me, and I will definitely get back to you. So I hope you found this episode enlightening, informative, a little bit of fun. If you did, and you know other business owners that are struggling with the same things that you are, or maybe they've expressed other concerns, share the podcast. That's what it's for. Our goal is to help all business owners grow and help the entire business community thrive. And I want to do that through education. So thanks for listening and have an amazing day.